All right, welcome to thebusinessprofessor.com. What this video is about is my master checklist for the startup venture. So I'm going to take you through the different aspects really quickly just to make sure you have an understanding of why I included this, where I included it in the overall checklist for creating a startup venture. So you start with the idea, concept, product, or service. Okay, so where do you come up with an idea or ideation? Okay, you may come up with a new idea, a new concept, and you bring that about through some form of innovation. You may acquire or utilize some existing business idea or concept, etc. That is, you didn't create it, you just combined with, say, an existing business, etc. Or perhaps you purchased it from the inventor, etc. So you can move forward. Or you improve on an existing concept. Okay, if you develop a new concept, you're like Apple. Okay, Apple Corporation, they come up with an idea that previously people didn't know existed. They didn't know they wanted this, so come up with something new. Where other companies simply acquire something, they market it at a larger scale and make people aware of it better. Or you can improve upon something existing. You can create a product that is a little bit different, that has some differentiation aspects that make it better. In any event, you're going to come up with your idea or concept, and it's going to serve as the ground for moving forward. All right, so then you develop the product or service to meet your customer needs. So again, you can acquire that. You can do it through personal development. You can hire individuals on the outside through work for hire agreements, or you can have employees to work on that to further develop the product or service, right? Outsourcing it is always an option once you have the design in place, etc. So you can either do it basically internally, externally, or you can acquire some form of operation, such as, say, you buy a franchise agreement or you enter into a franchise agreement, etc., where you implement somebody else's operational plan. So again, you're not creating that, you're carrying out somebody else's operational plan. Market research. Okay, before you move forward with a business idea, you need to understand the aspects of the market that's in place. Is this an idea that we can move forward on? Lots of great ideas, inventions are really neat. There's not a market for it, okay? Or there's not sufficient market where you can make a return on your investment. So in which case, unless you're simply wanting to do something to do it rather than potentially make some return or to have sufficient income or revenue that you can grow the business and turn it into a profitable or business entity that is capable of continual operations, you need to understand about the market. So what are some things you need to understand? Well, you need to understand the qualitative and quantitative characteristics of it. Qualitative being the general aspects such as what are preferences, things like that, where quantitative gives you the actual numbers behind things. So what is your market size? What are your market segments? That is, who are your customers within each market segment? Because different customers will want different things from a given product. Okay, so product might appeal to one segment for one reason, to another segment for another, and what are they willing to pay for it? Okay, so that'll change in between. You'll be able to determine the market potential within each segment, and so you can determine your target market. Who is it most beneficial to market towards that can produce the most revenue or income for the business, right? Who can you most adequately address? And are there any secondary markets, etc., that after focusing on the target market, you can also appeal to these secondary markets? Pricing models. What are individuals in each market segment going to pay or willing to pay for your product? If you don't know what these individuals in each market are willing to pay, you can't tell which market is more beneficial. If you have a segment with 100 people in it, but they're willing to pay $1,000 for your product or $1,000 an hour for your service, well, that's $100,000. Okay, versus a market with 1,000 people and they're willing to pay $200. Well, the market segment at the lower price scale targeting towards this market will produce greater returns. Okay, so again, you need to understand the price or what people are willing to pay, and then at each level, for what aspects of your product or service individuals want, what will it cost you to produce that product or sell or provide that service to individual. So your cost of production. All of this stuff is right there under, you're going to use market research to determine this. You're going to use direct and secondary sources, primary or secondary sources to find this out, which could be direct research or, like I say, you relying on someone else's resources to provide you with that information. Now, if you're going to enter a market, you need to understand what the competitive landscape is about. Okay, there may be people in the market who are already supplying this good or service to individuals. Okay, while the potential market size is there, what's your ability to grab a share or percentage of that market? Now, this could be using the SWOT analysis, which is probably most common or well known, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats within a given market, given your business characteristics or your resources that you have in place. Porter's 5 Forces is another common one. But anyway, bottom line, you're going to use this to develop a business strategy. That is, how are you going to be attractive above other types of business within this market? Are you going to be the lowest cost? Are you going to be the highest cost but the highest quality? Are you going to be differentiated in some way that you can be the easiest to use, the fastest, the simplest, the most attractive, the best customer service, etc. Some combination of these techniques. Are you going to be in a niche market? Or are you going to play in the market at large? So again, you're going to use this to develop some type of strategy, because you can't be all things to all people. You can't be a luxury good and be the lowest price good on the market. Two different customer segments. So you have to use the market information to determine what strategy your company is going to pursue. Okay, and then within that strategy, what can you do to create a competitive advantage? Is there some aspect that you can secure, say intellectual property rights, some kind of first mover advantage, a brand name that you establish ahead of time, strategic relationship with partners in the business, or a unique relationship that gives you access to resources such as supplies, building materials, raw materials, something like that, that gives you an advantage that other individuals in the industry cannot copy. And then you ask yourself, well, is that sustainable? Over time, will these individuals not be able to copy what gives me an advantage over them? Because the competitive nature says other businesses will copy whatever is giving you a temporary advantage. So you look at this and say, is it enough to get me running and started, and can I continue on in this fashion? Okay? Then how are you going to start funding the businesses? Well, the seed capital or startup capital generally is going to come from your personal funds, personal credit, etc. Business loans may be available to you if you can get a small line of credit that you personally guarantee or something like that. But by and large, it's going to come from friends, families, and fools, as they say, that individuals who are willing to invest early in your business. But by and large, it's going to come from personal funds to get started, okay, until you get rolling. Later opportunities for debt or equity arrangements will come up later, okay, as the business grows. But what are your resources? One of the most popular is the intellectual property aspects of your business. If you have some intellectual property aspect, well, that is a form of competitive advantage, and it is a form of security that will give confidence to lenders and investors, and will allow you to compete adequately in a market without it. So identifying what intellectual property can be associated with the business, even if, say, it's a trademark in your branding, or you're writing books or other things that you're copywriting, or say you have a manufacturing process or something like that, or piece of designed equipment or good in place that you can get a design patent on, or design or utility patent on. Say design is for the appearance, utility is for the use. That could give you some advantage in the market. So identifying these up front is critical and important. Okay, you need to put forward a preliminary business plan. Okay, what do I mean by that? I don't mean drawing out the long business plan that you use to get a loan, or you know, which is the primary use of a business plan these days. But you put down the basic things, the things that are most important to the functionality of the business: infrastructure, team members, funding, strategic positioning, etc. Things like that that you will need to understand to move your business forward. Is this business financially feasible? Does the competitive market allow for room here? Who are our suppliers and what's our cost structure there? What's our potential for revenue? Things like that. You're going to need to understand this moving forward. So getting together a preliminary rough plan together so you can look at it and have guiding portions portions that will help guide you through different decision-making aspects. Okay. Forming a team. You cannot do everything yourself. In a small business, if you want to keep it a small business, a mom and pop business, you may be able to continue doing everything yourself. If you want to grow your business or become larger, especially in a startup venture, you cannot spend all your time working in the business. You have to spend your time working on the business. So you need complementary team members to help you grow this. If you can't compensate them, then you have to give them an ownership interest in the business. Perhaps you can compensate them and you can simply hire people. But it is extremely important to hire people that share a vision or a mission that is similar to your business if you want it to be successful and grow. And you need to have in mind that you understand leadership versus management. Management, managing the operations. Leadership, inspiring, motivating people in your general direction. What will inspire and motivate the type of people that you hire? Is it increased compensation? Is it autonomy? Is it giving them a pat on the back every day? Is it simply building something that they can take credit for, etc.? Find out what motivates these individuals and provide that form of motivation, and you will be a successful leader. Okay, forming the business entity. These are the mandatory processes in place for establishing your business infrastructure and organizational structure so you can carry on business. Extremely important, but you need to, the important thing is that you need to have some understanding ahead of time in place. What do you need to consider to put into the structural organizational documents? Who's going to make decisions? Who's going to have authority? Who has rights and what? Are you going to use this structure as a form of compensation that you can give equity, interest, etc.? So you'll have to have all these aspects worked out. We have an entire video series on it that'll help educate you on the things you have to consider when forming your business entity. Ownership agreements. Establishing relationships between the owners of the business, incredibly important. Again, you have to have everybody incentivized the same way and everybody on the same page. Somebody has to be the decision maker. Somebody has to be in charge of certain things. Somebody has to be the doer, etc. So organizing the entity and structure appropriately and documenting that so there is no questions moving forward, so you understand what are the responsibilities of different individuals. Preliminary administrative setup, that's setting up the bank account, the bookkeeping systems, getting insurance, getting any other form of professional help, etc. Okay, incredibly important for starting out the business. Okay, funding the business, transferring all the assets that are necessary to carry on business operations to the business. That comes along with separating the personal individual from the business. That is, transferring the funds, the business assets, etc., the resources over there. So the business is an entity that exists unto itself, separate from the individual. So the business is then adequately capitalized to carry on business. That, and then in the same thing, it may require issuing ownership interest to the individuals who fund the business through the introduction of cash or other resources. Okay, finding real estate, doing a location analysis, figuring out whether it's better to lease or own. The location analysis will include an operational aspect. Is there a marketing component too that you can be seen for advertising purposes? What can you afford? How will that affect the cash flow going forward? Are there any zoning or other restrictions in place? Should you lease versus buy, right? Secondary administrative setup, that's the formal processes, business license, local registration, setting up your utility services, email services, mailbox, any other things like that, down to your accounting software, everything, to put that in place for it so you can actually start to carry on the business activity now that you have a location and you have all the licenses necessary. All right, you have the owners. Now you got to hire personnel to actually work on the business, because again, if you can't compensate people, you'll give a certain number of people ownership interest, and they'll oversee different aspects of the business. They'll likely work in the business some too, but again, to a certain extent, they'll oversee operation and work more on the business than in the business. So you'll hire personnel. Are you going to hire independent contractors to carry out things, such as maybe building your website or something that you don't need somebody there full time? You just simply need to pay somebody for a short period of time to do some things like an attorney to help you set up, a technologist to build your technology infrastructure, etc., versus full-time employees, the people you need there to carry on the business full-time, etc. Have something in place. How are you going to identify these people? How are you going to find people that have the same vision and motivation level that you and the other owners of the business have? So putting some time into your hiring process is extremely important. Verifying their eligibility to work, doing a credit or background check on these individuals, and then establishing the type of compensation that they're going to require. Okay? Again, your tertiary setup stuff, your tax accounting stuff, setting up automated deposits for withholdings such as payroll taxes, estimated taxes, etc. Setting up workers' comp coverage, any other employee benefits that are there now that the employees are on board that they can vest in within a few months. Setting up retirement accounts, lots of the ERISA issues like setting up 401k, IRA, any health plans, life insurance, things like that are benefits to the employee that the business can deduct, but also serve as a form of compensation to employees. Okay, what's going to be your sales or service strategy? Are you going to do personal sales of your product or service? Or are you going to outsource that to, say, distributors or third parties to carry out the services that you are largely marketing? You're going to have a brick and mortar establishment, or are you going to operate solely over the internet? You're going to be retail, or you're going to wholesale? You're just going to manufacture something and then sell that to retailers or wholesalers? So are you going to be B2B or B2C, business to business or business to customer? Okay, if you are going to carry on sales yourself, do you need an internal sales team or an outside sales force or service team? Either way. So all of these are aspects about, you need to draw that out. You need to have an understanding of how the money is going to be generated at the final level and come back up the organizational structure. Okay, marketing plan. Start laying out your marketing plan. Are you going to have a traditional plan, you print, TV, mail, radio, signage, all that kind of stuff? Or are you going to have some of the more modern ways, and modern being a relative term, website, how are you going to set that up? What's it going to look like? You're probably going to need a professional marketer and web developer to help you to adequately put your image out there. Are you going to market in some of these other formats, like over the internet with pay-per-click? Or are you going to try to build up your search engine presence so you come up at the top of the list in Bing or Google or Yahoo search engine? You're going to put together a social media plan so people can find you on social media. You're going to put a business app out there if you have some internet service that you're doing, etc. So you're going to need to have all these things in place again very soon, early in the life of the business once you get operating. Now, a business plan or business model. Again, we set up a preliminary business plan, but now you're going to have to develop it further. You don't have to develop it all together as a single plan. You may have individual documents that go towards organizational structure, that goes towards finances, that goes towards strategic capacity, that goes towards anything else, any other portion of the business plan. You may have standalone documents, so the whole overall document's not so big and clunky. But bottom line, you're going to need planning tools. Lots of individuals go to the business model or business model canvas to create one-page or very short documents that put all the operational and strategic aspects on a small document, where the business plan is a larger, clunkier document. But if you're trying to seek outside debt financing, like through a bank, getting a small business loan or something like that, they're going to want to see a business plan. So while the business plan is not as useful for internal planning purposes for the business, it is extremely useful for getting a business loan. You won't get one without it. So the business model and canvas will be very useful for internal planning to present to investors, etc. Or you'll present some skinny version of the plan to investors, where the more developed full plan with full financials and a focus on equipment and collateral rather than use of funds for sales or services within the business model. So again, they're going to have different functions, but you'll have a business plan and a business model working that you'll need to keep updated. Venture capital, this is likely only an issue for the startup venture. This is getting investment from outside individuals. Angel investors are ultimately getting to a larger venture capital fund that can provide the growth funds that you need to achieve your growth objectives. How are you going to meet these individuals? through networking, through preparing your business to be attractive for venture capital investors, angel investors, or VCs. You're going to need to educate yourself on the process, and that's what this whole video series and website is about, educating yourself so that you understand how outside equity works, how valuation of the business works, what investors want in return for their investment, etc. So operations. You will slowly develop operations further and further and further. How are you going to produce your goods or services? Outsourcing, local sourcing, in-house production, etc. Ordering and customer service. What are going to be your logistics that you have in place for actually selling goods or providing services in different locations? What's the management plan and structure going to look like? Again, you're going to further develop your human resources as necessary. Your business governance requirements are going to get more and more complicated the more individuals you hire into the business. So having a firm structure in place and starting to educate yourself more on the requirements for meeting minutes, record retention, how you actually go about undertaking this type of activity and how it has to be memorialized in order to create a record and establish a protocol for doing it in the future, so things aren't haphazard in carrying out the business activity. And then lastly, what is your objective? Do you intend to carry on this business forever, or do you intend some sort of exit event? If it's a lifestyle business, you probably don't have an exit event. You probably have planning about how to pass this down to next generations, or possibly sell the small business to someone else. If you're a startup venture, you're looking towards some type of exit, and you're going to have to make investors aware of how they're going to get their money back. Are they going to get their money back at a later round of venture capital? Are you eventually going to sell to a strategic investor, to some private equity firm through, say, a leveraged buyout or something like that, where you're trying to grow the business large enough where you can eventually sell to another larger strategic for a higher valuation? Or are you going to go public? You may even have a contingency plan that you're going to liquidate the business or go through bankruptcy. Okay, depending on what stage of business. Now, the bankruptcy obviously isn't something you want to plan for up front, but if you have an idea that you will eventually liquidate the business through the sale of assets, you'll need to have a plan in place for that. Now, I want to say that's it. This is the conclusion, but the list that I have here is by no means totally exhaustive. There will be minor aspects to include in there, but I wanted to give you an overview of the type of things that you need to consider that are important for carrying out this type of business objective, to grow your business or to sustain your business, and to have an overall concept of the things that go into growing a business beyond just say, this is what I do, this is how I carry it on. There are a lot of other moving parts, and hopefully this gives you some landmarks that you understand what go into the business planning process.